Well, it's interesting because the United States Department of Justice investigated Lance Armstrong for 2 years. A grand jury was convened and no criminal charges were brought. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, as you noted earlier, now has filed charges against him. But I think it's important to stress that the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency is not a government agency. It's a nonprofit organization that has legal authority but cannot file criminal charges. So in a worst-case scenario, Lance Armstrong would lose his medals, but he will not go to court. He will have an arbitration hearing, but his days of going to court, in all likelihood, will not happen. Well, I think often with athletes, we're very skeptical in the United States whenever we hear that they're implicated in drugs. We know from Major League Baseball with the steroid scandal, we know from other sports, we know from boxing, and even less notable sports, whenever there are drug accusations, I think many people tend to assume guilt. But as we know, it's often not the case. Sometimes people are accused of things that they haven't done. But I think the public, when it comes to athletes, often thinks that the person is probably guilty. But with Lance Armstrong, he was not indicted, and the Justice Department closed its investigation of him. Yeah, so Armstrong will likely argue that the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency is an entity whose jurisdiction perhaps should be curtailed. That this agency, again, is not a government agency, that it has a lot of authority, and that its standard for proof is much lower than beyond a reasonable doubt, as would be the case with the criminal trial. And he's going to argue that he hasn't had due process, that he's passed over 500 drug tests, he has never failed a drug test, and that the allegations against him, he hasn't had an opportunity to challenge in court, and he won't. He'll get an opportunity in an arbitration hearing, but that's very different and the rules are very different. Thank you.